I've heard it mentioned that recruiting or driver recruiting kind of has a dirty little secret is what I called it. Do fleets do that?
I've come across some that have, yeah.
All right, so this is episode 2 of Digging Deeper into Driver Recruiting with Dave. This is the first shirt with buttons that I've had on since March. I'm David Arsenault. I'm the Senior Director of Marketing, and this is Seth Becker. I don't know your title.
I work with our sales team, VP of Sales for our recruiting team.
Who are you looking at?
Yeah, everybody. You, Josh.
You're such a professional interviewer.
Yeah, no, I'm so good. This is not an interview. We're digging deep into driver recruiting. Topic for today is the currency of fleet reputation. And we'll get into what that means. But The idea of it came when we were talking about another idea. I've heard it mentioned that recruiting or driver recruiting kind of has a dirty little secret is what I called it. There are fleets out there who kind of feel like turnover's not actually a bad thing. And that if you can keep a driver for X amount of time and keep your cost per hire below X amount of dollars, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Is that true?
I think when you look at the numbers, I could see how somebody doing a math equation could say, yeah, that's true. The thing that maybe they're not taking into consideration is the reputation piece of it. So if you're just churning through drivers, those drivers go out and do what? I mean, they go and work with somebody else. They're talking to other drivers, and they may even be going on to different websites like Glassdoor, even Google, Facebook, where they can put their feedback on working with a specific fleet. So that has a pretty big impact.
You kind of said, like, in theory, fleets could do that.
Yeah.
Do fleets do that?
I've come across some that have. Yeah. They're not overly worried about holding on to drivers for a really long time. More so that their current trucks are filled. And if they just need to constantly replace them, as long as they can do that at a reasonable cost per hire, as you mentioned, they're not overly concerned about it.
When I wrote the article about that, Josh, you could do something cool where I say, when I wrote the article, and then you can make the article link.
Well, your hand's out of the frame there, so you should do the other hand.
Oh, the article. We talked about what is the true cost of driver replacement. We mostly talk about, excuse me, you might have to edit that part out. When we talk a lot about cost per hire as it relates to advertising. When we talk about the true cost to replace a driver, that's a lot more. Can you kind of give us a quick example of like what all that?
Yeah, absolutely. So once you've got the driver committed to come work with you, you've still got to get them to orientation, right? So there's a cost associated with travel, with lodging, with food once they get there. There's a number of reports you're going to want to run, background checks, drug testing, being in a truck. There's a lot of other costs associated with onboarding a driver.
You know, generic fleet X.
He's been using brand X.
They have this mindset of, and I call it the commodity mindset of a driver's just a commodity.
Yeah.
If they think of their drivers as just commodities, will drivers feel that?
I don't see how they couldn't, right? I mean, it's not only with what they go online to read about a certain fleet, but once they're there, what's that experience like? I mean, if they're being treated as a commodity, I can't imagine they're going to stick around very long. Yeah, you can absolutely feel that when you go to work with somebody, what they think about you and do they value what you're bringing to the table.
We did do a survey of drivers with CCJ, and what was it? You may have to do another stat correction, Josh, but I believe it was only 1 in 10 drivers in the survey felt like they got respect at their current fleet. So let's get down to the dollars and cents. So we talk about kind of the true cost of turnover when you only take into account driver replacement. What we did in the article is we use referral rate as a proxy for your fleet's reputation. Do you think that is a valid proxy?
Yeah, it's definitely one way to look at it. I mean, on average, now every fleet's going to be different, but from what I've seen, about 20% of all hires coming in, on average, come from referrals and rehires. Now that can be, like I said, fluctuate from one fleet to the next quite a bit, but yeah, if your current drivers are not satisfied, they're probably not going to recommend other drivers to come work at the same company, right? So yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, how could it not impact that if employee satisfaction is not very high?
Also, what we did inside of that article is we looked at, so we used referral rate, and we said, let's say if the average is 20 and you're a great fleet that really invests in driver wellness type stuff, and you could bump that up to 30, what would that look like over the course of a year? And we have a great recruiting budget calculator. And so I plugged it into there and I bumped up the referral rate and I made every other aspect flat. So I put like a 500 truck fleet.
Yeah.
You know, their turnover rate was like in the 60%, somewhere around there. And I mean, over the course of a year, you're talking about, you know, close to 400, somewhere between like 400 to $1 million, 400,000 to $1 million that you're going to have to spend extra to bring on drivers just because so many less of your hires are coming from referrals.
One number to take into consideration too, right, in full transparency is a lot of fleets do have a referral program where they will pay out, right? So if a driver brings in another driver, they may give them a referral bonus. So that may need to be calculated in there as well. But in general, I mean, you're still talking hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of a year. It's pretty significant.
You know, another aspect, I don't even remember if we talked about that in the article. You don't have to put that one in there. Is that, branded search is a big contributing factor to the amount of inbound leads and inbound phone calls that you have coming in.
Yeah.
And if you have a poor reputation, that also is going to go down, you know?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the cost per lead is going to be impacted because if, you're paying for to put your message out in front of a specific audience, but that audience keeps passing on your message, which is going to cost you more in the long run.
In your experience, so if you really were convinced that, your own reputation really, because we kind of taking this back to where we were, there's a currency to your reputation.
That's right.
True dollar sign by reputation in the driver recruiting world. And, but what does it look like to invest in that reputation? Because it's still going to cost money to invest in your reputation, right? Is it worth it, do you think? And what does that look like?
The way I like to look at it is every company has a story to tell. And if you're not telling your story, who is? Because somebody's telling your story. And so if you're not taking control of that, is it former drivers who had a terrible experience telling your story? If that's the only people telling it, it's going to hurt you, right? You got to get out in front of that. Just as an example, I mean, video is such a great way to tell stories, probably the best way. What types of videos have you invested in? Once again, putting your culture, are you putting your company out there so that even if you're not necessarily have a ton of openings or doing a ton of hiring, you still want to maintain that top of mind awareness so that drivers, when they decide to make a move, they're thinking about you. When you think about the pool of drivers available now, the quality of driver, maybe it's never been higher, right? And it's no fault of that driver necessarily. Maybe the company they were working with, that the freight's just not there. So they were furloughed, or, the company had to let them go. And so you've got, like the oil industry, for example, I mean, how that's really been impacted. And so you've got some really quality drivers there that are now looking or considering going out and finding a different type of freight to haul. you want to maintain that top of mind of awareness with a group like that, so you'd be considered when they look into it.
Going back to the referral rate idea, is that something you think every fleet should track, their own referral rate, and how many of their hires are coming from referrals and rehires?
Yeah, absolutely. And it does surprise me because that is a question that I often hear, the account executives ask is, what percentage of your overall hires come from referrals? And it does surprise me, companies of all sizes, large and small, who don't know that number. They don't have it handy. Maybe they don't track it at all, right? It does surprise me.
Would that be a good goal for fleets to track that and to try and increase it? I mean, if you're looking at, kind of, if we get back to kind of that, your reputation is money.
Right.
And so if you're going to invest in it, could you just look at rehire rate and say, like, rehire and referral rate and say, this is where we're at now. Our goal is to increase it to this. I don't have to go into the how to set a goal, but that is I think that is a pretty solid proxy for, bringing in more revenue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or keeping more of it, I guess, would be a better way of saying it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you should know where all your hires are coming from. And really by doing the math equation and understanding where you're getting that best cost per hire, and what hires tend to stick around the longest, because there's research that also shows that referrals tend to stick with companies longer, right? So that's another part of the equation is, hey, if this 20 to 30% that came from a rehire or a referral, their average length of stay is a year longer. I mean, think of the savings there.
A great way to know where all your hires are coming from? Stratus.
Stop it with the hand.
Stop that!
No, I agree.
The first fully phone integrated ATS. I don't know if you can use that. Sorry, that got us way off.
But I mean, in general, an application tracking system.
Yeah,
absolutely leverage the tools that are available there.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else you would add to that idea of? And let's do a quick recap. There are definitely fleets who think of drivers as commodities.
Yeah.
That mindset will affect the way you treat drivers, which logic and common sense would say that if they feel like commodities, then they're not going to recommend your fleet.
That's
making
right.
your referral and rehire rate go down, which
not only would they not recommend it, but they may do the opposite.
They'll actively tell people to
Right.
stay away. So that makes your cost per hire go up because you're not getting that many referrals and no one's looking for you to call you up. Although it does cost money to invest in your reputation and maybe to invest in driver wellness, not nearly as much as a bad reputation would cost.
That's right.
What would you add to that?
Just a couple things to come to mind. One being a survey that I recently was reading through, really interesting, where they were talking to drivers and they asked them, how often do you go and read reviews on a fleet before you apply? And it was close, I think it was 67%. So close to 70% said they always read reviews on a fleet, on a carrier before they apply. Another about 25% said they sometimes do. So when you add those up, it's a very small percentage that never read reviews, right? So take that into consideration. Couple that along with, the other surveys where it's very clear that when they say, hey, when you go to look for a job, what's the first thing you do? A new driving position. Number one answer all the time is an online search. So if they're doing an online search, what comes up when they search for your fleet? And are they going to start clicking on things, or are they instantly going to move on to something else?
Yep. Well, I think that's a good spot to end it. That was episode 2 of Digging Deeper into Driver Recruiting. Right, Josh?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
You want to close it out with your best dad joke?
Oh, gosh, I don't know if this is the best one. It's just the one that came to top of mind for me. So, how does because we're surrounded by the woods here.
Yeah.
How does a crazy person get through the woods? How? They take the psychopath. Oh,
That's terrible.
uh,
All right, that's it. Done. Well, I was writing a blog the other day, and I was wondering, is butt cheeks one word, or should you spread it apart? Cut that part out.